Most people who tell you they saved their first $100,000 by 30 are leaving out the most important part of the story. And it's not what you think. They'll show you the spreadsheets. They'll walk you through the budget. They'll talk about cutting lattes and meal prepping. But there's something underneath all of that they're not saying out loud. Something that changes everything about whether this goal is actually realistic for you. Here's what nobody wants to admit. Saving $100,000 isn't really about discipline. It's about math that either works in your favor or doesn't. And most of the advice you're getting assumes your math looks like someone else's math. It doesn't. Think about the last time you tried to follow a savings plan you found online. Maybe you lasted 2 weeks, maybe 2 months. You felt good at first. You were finally taking control. Then rent went up, or your car needed work, or you got sick and missed 3 days of pay. Suddenly, the plan that looked so clean on paper started falling apart in your actual life. And here's the worst part. You probably blamed yourself. You thought you weren't disciplined enough. You thought other people had some kind of willpower you were missing. But that's not what happened. What happened is you tried to force a strategy built for someone else's financial reality onto your own. The advice fails because it starts with a number and works backward. Save this much per month. Hit this milestone by this age. But it never asks the only question that actually matters. What's left over after you've handled everything you can't avoid? Most savings advice assumes your necessities are negotiable. Just move somewhere cheaper. Just get a roommate. Just drive less. As if rent, transportation, and food are luxuries you've been too lazy to optimize. But you already know your rent isn't high because you wanted a nice place. It's high because that's what it costs to live near your job. Your car payment isn't wasteful. It's the thing that gets you to work. These aren't choices. They're the price of participation. The core insight is this. Savings isn't about what you do with your money. It's about what your money does before you even touch it. The people who hit $100,000 by 30 aren't more disciplined than you. They have more room. And room gets created by 2 things: income that exceeds your survival costs by a meaningful margin, and time without financial emergencies. That's it. That's the entire game. Everything else is just details. Let's break down what this actually looks like. First, the income part. If you're making $40,000 a year and your rent, car, insurance, food, and minimum debt payments add up to $32,000, you've got $8,000 in theoretical room. That's about $660 a month. Sounds doable, right? Except that number assumes nothing goes wrong. No medical bills, no sudden job loss, no family emergency, no broken phone or stolen laptop or busted water heater. Real life doesn't work in clean columns. Real life has friction, and friction eats room. So that $660 per month becomes more like $300 once you account for the unpredictable. At $300 per month, you'd need 27 years to hit $100,000. Not exactly the timeline you see in those motivational posts. Now, let's say you're making $70,000. Your necessities might be $40,000. That leaves $30,000 in room, $2,500 per month. Even with friction, you're still saving $1,500 or more. At that rate, you hit $100,000 in 5.5 years. Start at 24, you're there by 30. That's the math people are working with when they say it's easy. See the difference? It's not about wanting it more. It's about the gap between what comes in and what has to go out. And that gap is structural. You can't budget your way out of not having it. Here's the second part. Time without disasters. Saving only works if you get to keep the money. But most people don't build wealth in a straight line. They build it in bursts between setbacks. You save $2,000, then your transmission fails and it's gone. You save $5,000, then you lose your job and drain it staying afloat. You save $10,000, then someone you love needs help, and of course you're going to help them. The people who reach $100,000 by 30 usually had a quiet decade. No major health crisis, no prolonged unemployment, no family catastrophe that became their financial responsibility. They had room, and they had time to let that room compound. Most people don't get both. So what do you do if your math doesn't look like that? You stop chasing someone else's milestone and start building your own system. A system that works even when the gap is small and the emergencies are frequent. First, forget the goal of 100,000 by 30. Seriously, let it go. That number is arbitrary. It's designed to make you feel behind. What matters is direction, not destination. Are you more stable this year than last? That's the only question. Second, focus on widening the gap, not just filling it. This means two parallel tracks. Reduce what has to go out and increase what comes in. But be honest about what's actually reducible. If you're already living in a small place with a roommate and cooking most of your meals, you're not going to slash expenses in half. The next dollar of savings has to come from the income side. That might mean switching jobs. It might mean learning a skill that pays more. It might mean moving to a place where the same job pays the same but costs less to live. These are slower moves than cutting a subscription, but they're the only moves that actually change the structure. Third, automate the gap. Whatever's left after necessities, move it before you see it. Not because you can't trust yourself, but because decision fatigue is real. If you have to choose to save every time you get paid, you'll find reasons not to. But if it moves automatically, it just becomes part of the background. You adapt to what remains. Fourth, build the buffer before you build the pile. This is the part most advice skips. They tell you to invest immediately because compound interest, but if you don't have a cushion, the first emergency sends you into debt, and debt costs more than investment gains. Get 3 months of expenses saved and cash you can touch. Boring, safe cash. That's your foundation. Only then do you start thinking about growth. Fifth, expect setbacks and plan for them. You will have to use the savings. That's not failure. That's what savings is for. The goal isn't to never touch it. The goal is to rebuild it faster each time. If it takes you 8 months to save $2,000, then you use it, and it takes you 6 months to save $2,000 again, you're winning. You're getting more efficient at creating room. Now let's talk about what this actually produces over time. You're not going to wake up rich. You're not going to retire at 35, but you will notice something shifting. You'll stop feeling like you're one bad month away from collapse. You'll start making decisions based on what you actually want, not just what you can afford this week. You'll have space to say no to things that drain you. That's what financial stability actually feels like. It's not a number in an account. It's the absence of panic. It's being able to handle a $400 surprise without spiraling. It's knowing that if you need to leave a bad situation, you can. That's worth more than any milestone. And here's what happens after a few years of this. You look back and realize you've built something without even noticing, not because you were disciplined, not because you deprived yourself, but because you set up a structure that worked with your reality instead of against it. The money accumulated is a byproduct of having room and protecting it. Most people never get there because they're too busy trying to match someone else's highlight reel. They see the $100,000 and they don't see the $70,000 salary, or the rent-free year living with family, or the signing bonus, or the inheritance, or the partners splitting costs. They just see the number and feel behind. But you're not behind. You're just playing a different game with different constraints, and the only way to win your game is to stop pretending it's someone else's. So, here's what you take from this. Saving isn't a character test, it's a math problem with variables you don't fully control. Your job isn't to be perfect, it's to widen the gap however you can, protect what's in it, and give yourself time to let it work. Some years you'll save a lot. Some years you'll save nothing. Some years you'll go backward. That's not failure, that's life. The only failure is giving up because the timeline doesn't match what you saw online. Build the system, trust the structure, ignore the milestones. The money will come when the room is real and the time is protected. And when it does, you won't need to post about it. You'll just know.